Hello, welcome to Streamside Stories with Youth Dynamics Adventures in Idaho. If you've been adventuring with us for a while, this might feel oddly familiar. We did these back in the spring of 2020 as a way of taking people on adventures even though we couldn't back in the days of COVID lockdowns, way of keeping social during social distancing. But we're bringing it back, not because of any crazy pandemics that are happening in our world, just as a way of sharing some of our stories and the lessons learned into the digital world. So, welcome. I'm Brandon. I'm one of the staff here at Youth Dynamics. If you've watched these before, it's all been Ryan, which you'll see more of him and his great storytelling as well. But we're going to broaden the cast, share some more stories, and bring you along. So, yeah, without further ado, I'm going to start the series back off with a story about raining snakes. So, a lot of you have shared this adventure with us. One of the places that we get to take young people is the Owyhee River. It's out in eastern Oregon, beautiful desert river. By some metrics, it's the loneliest river in the lower 48 states. And we have the privilege of taking people on 7-day self-sustained inflatable kayaking trips out there. So we're out there, it's more of a backpacking style river trip. Lots of small rapids, beautiful scenery. We get to see tons of different kinds of rocks. And it's kind of one of our signature moments. But a couple years ago, it was my first summer full-time staff. Was out there with a group of young men from Anacortes, Washington, Youth Dynamics students. And they were all going into their senior year of high school. It was kind of this like big sending off into the next stage of life kind of trip. So it was the boys, their leaders, and then the guide team, which comprised of me, Ryan, two of our summer staff, Caleb and Tommy. But we had a really great trip. It started out a little like we met them at Rome, the put-in, and trying to establish dialogue took a little bit of time. The boys all knew each other super well, so we were kind of the outsiders, even though we were leading the trip. And it's just how it goes. But they're all athletes, so they were really good paddlers. They had been outside before, so there was not really anything new. It was just bigger and grander than they had seen. So, and we had high water for the time of year, so we had this really cushy, easy trip in that sense, but there was this weird divide between the guide team and the participants that I've never felt before on a trip. But we go for a few days, it's getting a little better. We get to this place called Chalk Basin. It's this really cool spot on the Owyhee. There's Chalk Dome that we get to hike up to in the mornings. There's a really good swimming spot there. The canyon kind of opens up a little bit so you get a lot more light. And it's just awesome. I apologize for any noises. There's an ATV zipping around up above the river here, but we'll try to edit it out. Anyway, we enjoyed a nice evening. We did some like log rolling kind of games on flipped kayaks in the water that night. Woke up next morning super early before the sun rose to do a sunrise hike to the top of Chalk Dome. I get a lot of cool pictures up there. It's usually a significant moment for people on the trip. So we start hiking, just barely left camp, and there's this just big bull snake in the middle of the trail. And I grew up in a place where snakes act more like kittens, where they don't harm you. In fact, they're kind of fun to like poke around with. I still hated those even. So now I'm in the desert where the snakes are a little more vicious, and we see one. And this one, bull snake, harmless, still had me jumping off the trail, tingle up the spine, and I'm like, what a terrible morning to wake up. I just saw a big snake, and I hate snakes. But eventually, the snake passes, we pass, everyone goes on their way. We get to the top of the dome, have our great sunrise breakfast, quiet time, take cool photos. One photo, it looks like we're on the moon up there, and I use it in all sorts of social media posts. People are probably sick of it by now, but we'll throw it in the video anyway. Anyway, so we come back down. We're close to camp, and this is when I see a first for me, which is a rattlesnake. Before I know it, Ryan has a big stick. He's lifting up part of a bush. Below that bush, I see the tail of a snake just rattling away, and it's all curled up in there, and I am, again, jumped way off the trail going, why are we looking at this? We should be running. Running, I tell you. But there we are, looking at the snake. And this one, this is a snake that can hurt. And in my mind, I'm really going, what a terrible morning to wake up. Like, I want to be in my sleeping bag just like this, safe from all snakes. And I'm just like, once I get in the water, I will be safe from the snakes. There cannot be snakes in the water, right? And for the first few hours of our day, there were no snakes in the water. In fact, we made it to lunch, got to Potter's Cave, had lunch in the cave, and that's like the start of what becomes a really pretty section of river. So we all get in our kayaks, group up, and we're gonna send everybody out for a little solo paddle for about a mile. So we're underneath this cliff band, all grouped up. Ryan's telling us what the solo paddle is going to look like. And we just about ready to, pray and break off when I see something out of the corner of my eye fall out of the sky. And then the next thing I see is one of the students flinging this snake by the tail out of his boat and into the water, just blindly flings it behind him. We literally had a snake fall from the sky. And now it's in the water. Just, like, if you ever take a swiftwater rescue course, you'll learn that ropes in the water are called serpents of death. Here we had an actual serpent, thankfully not one of death, but a serpent in the water. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why are we out here? Like, I cannot wait for this trip to end, and we're only on day 4. We're like right in the middle of this thing. But luckily, the group rallied around that, and like, we got a really good laugh out of it. Eventually my nerves calmed down. Thankfully I had the solo paddle to help with that. And this really cool thing happened where, in a lot of ways, that broke the tension between the participants and the leaders and the guide team. And we had something to laugh about together now. And I think there's something really beautiful about how the Lord provides this funny thing, like a snake falling off of a cliff, to bring everybody together. And sometimes I think about that when other hard things in life happen, where I go, okay, this isn't fun in the moment, but how can we use this struggle, this surprise, this obscure thing to grow closer with other people and hopefully closer to the Lord. The helicopter up there. Anyway, so I'm not here to say that everything in life is sunshine and rainbows, but hopefully with the right people around us and the Lord's grace, we can find some hope in that. So that's the raining snake story. There will be more in that vein to come. But yeah, if this is just a continuation of your adventure with us as a ministry, great, glad you're here. If your algorithm sent you here and you're like, who are these people in Idaho talking about raining snakes? Welcome, glad you're here. I'll include some links in the bio for you to explore youth dynamics and what we do as a ministry more. And just ask that you be on the lookout for more stories to come. Thanks, guys.